All right, Mr. Superintendent, are we ready to go?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and of course, today is Thursday, April the 22nd. I'd like to welcome members of the community watching from home and also on our Zoom interface, as well as my fellow board members. Let's get ready to get started on a pretty awesome dialogue tonight. So let's go ahead and do our legal disclosure here. Today, we'll be conducting a school board meeting of the SAU 39 Consolidated School Board. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chairperson of the SAU 39 Consolidated School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to this meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the school board and select district staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to this meeting on Zoom and via phone by following the directions and links provided on our website, www.sau39.org. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during this meeting if there are any problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email A Wallace, that's AWALLACE at SAU39.org. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's get started by taking roll call vote attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state that they are, where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So let's call the roll. Ms. Kuzma.
Kuzma, I'm at home in Amherst by myself.
Great, Mr. Gauthier. Mr. Gauthier is actually not present this evening. Ms. Speed.
I am home and my husband is on the other side of the room.
Great, thank you. Ms. Grugin is not present as well. Mr. Conklin.
I am home alone.
Thank you. Mr. Gronstra.
I am home in Mount Vernon alone.
Thank you. Mr. Coughlin.
Home in Amherst alone.
Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor.
Alone.
Thank you. Mr. Torres.
I am home in Mount Vernon and I'm alone.
Thank you. Ms. Grund.
I am at my dad's house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm alone.
Mr. Glover.
I'm in a car and alone.
Thank you. And a warm welcome to Ms. Peters.
Thank you. I am at home in Amherst in the room alone.
Great. Ms. Lawrence.
I am at home in Mount Vernon and alone.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Pete Eckhoff. I'm home alone in Mount Vernon and I'm alone.
Awesome. Ms. Hinckley.
I'm home in Mount Vernon and I'm alone.
Great. Mr. St. Dennis. Mr. St. Dennis doesn't appear to be present. And again, my name is Stephen O'Keefe. I am in the booming metropolis of Mount Vernon, at home and alone. So let's get started. Before we do so, Mr. Gronstra, I would like to give you an opportunity to introduce your new board member, if that's okay, formally to the rest of the SAU staff.
Sure, thank you. Well, no, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. As you all know, we had an open seat due to Ms. Facey resigning and becoming our new business administrator to be. Or actually I should say the folks from Amherst voted in Miss Christine Peters. She goes by Christy, so she doesn't get mixed up with, and where's the other, CL, as she likes to be called. So in any case, please welcome Christy Peters as our newest board member to the Sauhegan Cooperative School Board.
Great. Thank you, Christy, and welcome aboard again. We definitely look forward to partnering with you as we successfully navigate the runnings of our district and looking out for the best interests of our students, staff, and our community. So welcome aboard. Let's open it up for public comment for our first of 2 public comment periods. And as a reminder to the public, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature. We'll go ahead and we'll call on you. And then from there, you've got the floor for 3 minutes. Just remind you to kindly mention your name, your address, the town in which you reside, and then you'll have the floor. Let's go ahead and start off with Ms. Gibson. Ms. Gibson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking from my home, Marilyn Gibson, 166 Mack Hill Road, Amherst, New Hampshire. First of all, I want to welcome Christy Peters to the board. It's wonderful to have you in that position. Look forward to having conversations with you in the future. I would like to address what has happened over the last year and plus months as far as the pandemic and the handling of it by our wonderful staff, all the teachers, all the counselors, all the paras, in their flexibility in dealing with what has been thrown to you in the way you handled it. I also want to say at this point in time that the administration was very gracious in sharing the progress and the process that was used to handle the pandemic situation. And I think that's because of the great transparency that was given to that procedure. However, I see a lot of other issues that are going on in the school district that has a lack of transparency. And at this point in time, I'm just going to list those issues that I have addressed to the administration on several situations, some of which have been answered, let's say, in short detail. Others have been answered in short explanations, but I continue to pursue a more transparent way of dealing with these issues. One is the social studies curriculum that is coming up this coming year. It seems to have been postponed, kick the can. I would like to know that the suggestion I gave in regards to curriculum mapping for teachers is a very extensive tool that provides the transparency that all areas of our curriculum could use. I'd also like to say that the equity project that is currently being, I guess, used, or I have no idea what stage it's in now because of the fact that I've asked questions about it and those have not been answered. The only answer I got was there are no minutes to be shared with the public. And I think that is also a lack of transparency. Also, I would like to have the dates of the policy meetings that are upcoming this summer. I know that a lot of us have a great desire to spend some time away from home where we've been sheltered for so long. And I would appreciate those policy meeting dates so that way I can organize and all of the residents of the town can organize their summer and still have the opportunity to attend the. One other thing that I've asked is that the minutes that are taken. Yes.
Ms. Gibson, your 3 minutes are up, but I'll give you a 30-second extension.
Thank you. I would like to see more explanation in the details of the minutes that come forth. They are way too brief, and I think the taxpayers deserve a little more than that. Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you. And thank you for continuing to engage your school board. I appreciate that. Any other members of the public that would wish to address the board, please use your raise your hand feature and we will highlight you and open up the floor. And seeing none, we will move on to the principal's report. So in accordance with our past practice, what we'll do is we'll open up the floor for any questions for first the Clark Wilkins Amherst Elementary School principal. Again, any questions for the principal of the Amherst Elementary School? Great, seeing none. Anna's got her hand raised for a question for herself. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I have a question for myself. It's probably going to be brief. No, I just wanted to thank Beth, Josh, where's Terry and Tom. Last week, they came out and helped us with recesses after the vaccination. They helped with dismissal. Beth actually tore her husband out to help both days also, and really made it us be able to keep functioning during that time. So it was just a special thank you to them. So I appreciate their help.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. All right, seeing no additional questions for Anna, let's move on to the Amherst Middle School for Dr. Bernasconi. Any questions at AMS? Seeing no hands raised, I will ask a question of Dr. Bernasconi. Dr. Bernasconi, can you just share with us sort of the plans and the way that we're rethinking of the transition of the Mount Vernon Village School over to the middle school, and the steps that you're taking currently, and things that you're going to do to make it engaging and exciting for the kids?
Sure. Well, we had our first official transition evening event earlier this week. Yes, this week, where we had just an informal meeting with parents over Zoom to meet the administration, highlighted some of the kind of key events that are happening right now as best we can imagine them for the coming school year. And then also really just open it up to parents to hear what kinds of questions that they might have and what wonders are on their mind, how their students are feeling. So that was pretty well attended. We'll be following it up. We have some upcoming events where I'll be coming up to the village school to meet with 6th grade students. And we'll also have a Zoom opportunity for students who might be remote during the time. We're trying really hard to make sure that everything we do is really inclusive of students, regardless of the modality that they're in, so that we're really welcoming of all students. So those are a couple of the pieces that are coming up. We also have a parent night and a student night coming up where we'll have a panel of students who will be available to talk a little bit about the experience at AMS. And we're also still working on an opportunity for our Mount Vernon students to come and attend our Step Up Day on the last day of school, so that they can get a chance to meet the teachers in the 7th grade and have those opportunities. We also shared with the parents really that we're not a one-size-fits-all school, and we're really about making sure that every child feels seen, heard, and welcome. So we encourage families to reach out to us individually about any wonders that they might have, or if they have something that they think would really benefit their students in helping make the transition, so that we can really customize an approach that really helps to welcome them in. We'll also plan a number of different events over the summer for students to come and tour the building and just get acclimated to that, and work with some student ambassadors to help set those pieces up as well. Just really creating those connections across the board there. And then we'll also plan on some welcome events right around the first day of school and on that first day of school, so that all students new to Amherst Middle School have kind of a point place to go. So it can be a little intimidating that first day, just seeing this sea of people. So we'll have a designated area, similar to what we do with new staff, really just to welcome them, where they'll see a familiar face, and that will help acclimate them to the school. We're really, really fortunate to have John Schuttinger able to help guide this, as well as he knows so many of these families and really can help act as a further bridge. So those are just a couple of pieces that we're working on right now, but continuing to refine the process, always open to feedback from families. And as I shared with them on Monday night, we're better together. So I would continue to encourage them to reach out and collaborate with us, so that we can really make sure that we set their students up for success.
Great, thank you. Ms. Taylor.
I wanted to ask Bethany, do you have are you keeping record or of the NEWA scores that are remote versus in person?
So I would ask Christine to jump on that as well. So we have track of NEWA scores on a student by student basis. We haven't disaggregated the data in our current studies to look at that, other than teachers use NEWA scores to inform their instruction. So a remote teacher, for example, would be pulling up their class's NEWA scores in order to see on a case-by-case basis where students' areas of strength are and where they might need to tailor their instructional practices to better support each of those students. As a school, we're not disaggregating them remote versus in person, but we're really using and continuing to use those to tailor the instruction of the individual student.
And we do have the ability to disaggregate, but it is a manual process. We were able to code remote students as taking the assessment remotely. There's not a specific report, but we can manually calculate if needed.
Great, thank you. Ms. Kuzma.
Bethany, you mentioned Step Up Day. Will something happen or be available for students that want or will be staying remote through the end of the year as a Step Up Day to meet their teachers as well, whether virtually or,
Yep. Yeah, I don't think we've ever thought about the last day of school so early in the school year as we have this year. Everything from, we have a group of 8th grade students. We surveyed all the 8th grade students about what they really want and what's important to them in their last day and our end of the year celebration. And we have a steering committee of about 20 of those 8th grade students, to really working with our teacher leadership committee right now to design what the last day looks like before we give it over to teachers to kind of fill in the scaffolding of the day. But again, being inclusive is really, really important to us, and making sure that every child has an opportunity to participate. So we will be, and I'm trying to time my communications out so I don't overwhelm anyone, but after break, I'll be reaching out to families that are staying remote for the remainder of the year to inquire if they are interested in sending their student in person for the last day of school, and kind of sharing with them a little bit about what that day looks like. Because as many opportunities as we can offer families to step foot in the school, we think that's a great idea for families that want to take advantage of that and are able to. And we want to also make sure that we have remote options for families that, for whatever reason, aren't comfortable making that choice or aren't able to bring students into school. So we're working on both of those pieces. We will have a remote component to Step Up Day so that we're not leaving out anyone in the process. So once I get a solid idea of how many families may want to stay remote for that last day and how many may want to send their student in, then we can start to further refine our plans and communicate those out to families. But we'll make sure that we have something for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Dr. Bernasconi? Okay, let's head straight up to the Hill in the big city of Mount Vernon with Dr. Sarfty. Any questions for Dr. Sarfty? All right, I do have one question. In the Amherst Elementary School report, Dr. Sarfty, we saw that they were getting ready for outdoor classrooms. What steps are we doing to start to leverage our tents and set that stuff up as the weather starts to get nicer? I would just hate for us to do that mid-May and then lose out on that opportunity.
Yeah, certainly. So Roger Preston and I, and Roger, you can jump in anytime. We are working with the officials in town to make sure that we have that we're following all the proper protocols and that we have the correct that we have the permission to be able to do that. There are a couple of hoops that we had to jump through. We had to contact the police chief, also the fire chief, and then I believe there's another agency that we have to get permission from. And so we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lawrence.
Thank you. Dr. Sarfty, I just wondered, how did the after-school program meeting go? How was that received? Was there good participation, good questions? What's it looking like?
Yeah, so that was really great. The feedback has been so incredibly positive. I think people are really excited. Parents are really, really excited to bring an after-school program to Mount Vernon. One of the great things that the director talked about from the YMCA is that, we're going to be able to offer we're going to be able to offer after school care for students 5 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. But then also if there are parents who don't need to actually have after school care, there is the option for students to be able to join clubs, and they will have a number of different club offerings. And so I think that's something that's really appealing. So we're able to reach a broader audience and get more kids to be involved in our program.
That's great. Thank you. One other question. I've had a couple of parents ask questions about our start time and our starting date for next year. So if there's some way that we can just make sure that that's clear in our communications. And I think at the high school level, I've had the same question from families in town, just as an FYI.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any more questions for Dr. Sarfati? Okay, let's roll down the hill and head over to Sauhegan High School with Mr. Berry. Any questions for Mr. Berry? Ms. Grund.
Sure. So first of all, Mike, nice job playing in your first opening role of Fang Fest video. That was great. I hope the week's going well. I know my kids are having fun, so thank you. Also, I want to just follow up on the meeting, the faculty meeting, where you're going to talk about the guiding principles and the visioning process. And I'm hoping that our next meeting, we might be able to get an update of what came out of that meeting, because I think it'd be important for us to hear how that fits in.
Yeah, we had one yesterday around the visioning work and crosswalking the different types of documents. And we have one the second week of May, but I can give you an update at the, I think it's the May 19th board meeting that we can talk about that.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Berry? Ms. Taylor.
Can you tell me when the SAT results will be in for this year? Because there was a delayed test.
Laura, can you repeat that question for me, please?
Do you know when the SAT results will be reported back to the high school?
I do not. I can find out though.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Berry, if I can just inquire real fast, I know Dr. Bernasconi sent out a email to parents at the middle school with regards to April vacation travel and the quarantine requirements. At the high school, what's the process for parents to follow if their kids are going to be traveling to inform and go from in-person to remote over the course of that 10-day period?
It will be the same as the rest of the school district, and I will update the parents before we leave for the week, so it's consistent, so the message will be consistent.
Great. And just because selfishly I'm going to be needing to do that, and Dr. Bernasconi sent out a survey link that we did all that stuff online this past week, and I just didn't know if there was any process at the high school.
No, we've been following the same process that we've been using, like with the modality between segment 9 and segment 10, and the same travel process that we've used. But we can get some information out there to you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Berry? Great.
Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. O'Keefe, would I be able to say one quick thing?
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
sorry, I should have said it earlier. I just wanted to let everybody know, so now that it's public information. So Mrs. Jameson, who is our office manager at Mount Vernon Village School, will be leaving us very soon. And I just wanted to extend our best wishes to her in her retirement. And I know that she is somebody that everybody in Mount Vernon knows and loves very dearly. So just want to thank her for her endless dedication to our school and for being there for us every single day with a smile on her face. And so, just good luck to Mrs. Jameson.
She is definitely going to be somebody that we're going to miss quite a bit, that's for sure. But I wish her well up with her family in Maine. I know they moved away quite a while ago, and she's very happy to finally join them. So I'm sure we'll have more to say on that at our Mount Vernon meeting. But thank you, Doctor, for bringing that up. Let's move on to our consent agenda, seeing no other questions for Mr. Berry. Consent agenda, we're going to do a little bit differently tonight because there's a lot on there, and I'm assuming that we're going to be basically pulling everything. And so what I'd like to do is let's go ahead and actually go one by one, and then we are going to raise any concerns or issues with it. And at the end, we'll do one bundled approval so we can speed this along for everyone. First, let's go ahead and take a look at the minutes under item number 1, the March 18, 2021 draft minutes. Are there any requests to make any modifications? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the SAU budget transfer. Any requests? Inquiries? Great, Ms. Taylor.
Do you want me to ask now, or are you just doing an assessment?
Nope, I'm asking for everyone to go ahead and raise their concerns now. That way we can just do one vote, make it easier on today instead of doing several.
My question for the budget transfer was the FY22 SAU budget we just voted on had a lower amount in the position than is being transferred for the salary now. And I was wondering where those funds would come from next year. Is this a raise included in the numbers that are being transferred?
Michelle, did you want to address that?
Sure, I'm happy to. No, there isn't an increase in the amount that's being transferred. It can appear a little bit odd because in the FY22, there isn't an increase in the wage, but in FY21, which that transfer pertains to, the amount that was contracted was greater than the amount that was budgeted. And therefore, for managerial purposes and tracking the budget, that budget transfer is being put forward to cover that variance, if you will, in the current year. Did that help to answer your question?
Well, I'm just wondering, do we need to modify the SAU budget
No,
or FY22?
no.
Okay, well, what about the difference? Does that, for next year, are we going to be voting on this again to make up for whatever difference is not there?
In the budget process, increases are budgeted in a pool. And so when the next year rolls around and increases are determined, then the pool will be allocated appropriately. So this is kind of part of that process for the current year, if you will.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Let's move on to number 3, seeing no other concerns with regards to the budget transfer, the treasurer's report. Seeing no concerns there. Let's move on to district policies to rescind. I believe Ms. Kuzma wanted to make a comment here.
Yeah, there was a lettering typo. Anything that says JCIG should have said JICG, just the 2 middle letters are being flipped. Way easy to do with the way policies are numbered. It's the exact same policy. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that if you're looking up the old policy online, it's actually JICG. It is the tobacco policy that are being rescinded. And the JICG is also being rescinded at Amherst. So this is all, we figured we'd bring it up here and they all just need to be rescinded. You'll see these again at your individual board meetings. But we figured it'd be easier to discuss here if there was questions. And then they can just go to the individual boards to be rescinded.
Great, thank you. Ms. Taylor, you're first.
She just answered my question. I just wanted to clarify, we weren't actually rescinding by accepting this in the consent agenda. We were just accepting that we have been notified that this will be rescinded in the individual boards?
Yeah. Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Grund?
Yeah, one of the policies you have on the rescinding is ACA, but that policy is actually referenced in the SAU anti-discrimination policy on page 6. So I don't think we can rescind it if it's being referenced inside something we just passed in the fall.
It is, hold on a second. You said it's in ACAC.
No, so the Anti-Discrimination Plan, yes, that's even in our agenda packet. On page six of that, it references ACA. So we can't really rescind that.
So ACA needs to be rescinded because there are aspects of it that are currently illegal. After Title IX came out. So it's more of, we need to address the fact that ACA is in that, referenced in that policy on page 6, and we need to deal with that one. And just, it should reference ACAC instead.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say I saw that in there, so thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steph. Mr. Glover.
Yeah, I don't have an objection to the rescission for these reasons. My question is, the lettering is something that will guide people, whether it's in students or whether it's in board or other places. So the question is, will somewhere in the heading or in the policy there still be reference, or will there be cross-reference capabilities, so that if you're looking for what was formerly JBAA, for example, or GBED, that will still be listed under, for example, the student policies, and so that a person looking under student policies can find ACAC.
So the ACAC is actually Foundations and Basic Commitments. So it's more of, there's actually things that are student and staff policies that are the exact same thing, tend to be shifting more under the A policies instead of just specifically students, because it affects everybody within that concept. So it's definitely a thought for the policy committee, but they're not going to be staying under, we're not doing multi-headings of, for the most part, there's a couple, but this one is not going to be staying as, like ADC or ADB, ADC slash, JICG slash GCEB type of thing. They're living under the Foundations and Basic Commitments now, because that's more of a fitting concept.
Thank you. Mr. Coughlin.
Yeah, to John's point, the question is really about how we inform the public and the staff and the students about our policies, not about the policies themselves. If we had better software, because God knows we have software every place else, you'd be able to search for a term. In the case of the example John happened to pick, the topic of the J policy that's going away is sexual harassment, and the topic of the policy replaced it is sexual harassment. So if someone's just searching on the page that has all policies, they would find the right one anyway. But really, in an ideal world, we'd have indexed the complete body of the policies, so that you would find all references in every policy to, for example, sexual harassment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Coughlin. Mr. Glover.
Well, so to that point, until such time as we can index, then I would argue strongly that we should cross-reference, even if the link to a G policy just says C, ACAC. Otherwise, things will be difficult to find. I think that's a problem. And it's something that we have solved by cross-referencing in this way and having multiple abbreviations for the same policy in different locations.
Great. And so Ms. Kuzma and Mr. Coughlin, maybe I can make a suggestion that you discuss this at the policy committee when you guys convene this summer, just to sort of figure out if there's a better way to actually do it. Add that to the pile of things that you guys are already working on as a conversation.
I do think that the sexual harassment policies and anything that was replaced by ACAC currently needs to be wiped because they're counter. There is a chance legally wise that they're counter to the statute. So we need to be really cognizant of that. And I think that those need to be wiped and then we can deal with it in another way. But I have a concern of leaving some of these policies standing and up until we can meet over the summer and deal with it.
You know, absolutely. I think we should definitely proceed with the plan as stated tonight, just to address Mr. Glover's concern. Maybe you guys as a committee can discuss ways that we can rectify that concern and just make it a little bit more easier and seamless for the public to engage in our policies. Mr. Eckhoff.
Real quick, are these policies being run by our legal team? I mean, I would think that if we do run them past that, that would be the litmus test of what we're writing and enacting is proper for the district and for what we want to enact.
Especially ACAC was actually written, it's a heavy policy. It was, and really, I would say most of our policies are actually written by legal, by a lawyer at the New Hampshire School Board Association. But AC especially because of the content and the topic and the statute that mandated it, it was very, very heavily weighted and things like that. So, yep.
I would comment that it would be best to rely on our paid legal team to decide what we're doing is accurate and correct versus just wanton decision-making by us as a board. If they sign off on it, that's what we pay them for, then I think that the policies that you guys have built out should be suffice.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Eckhoff. Seeing no other hands raised for the rescission, let's go ahead and discuss the policy review session season additions. Anyone have any concerns with regards to that memo? Seeing none, let's move on to the grading software update. Any concerns there? Mr. Glover?
I appreciate the work to do this. And I saw on feedback, customized software, and gather feedback and make a determination on the grading software tool for next year is the March-June decision point. The question is, what happens if Power Teacher Pro fails the pilot? Does that mean that Empower Learning continues? Does that mean you go with Power Teacher Pro anyway? Or is there some other alternative that's being considered?
So if Power Teacher Pro, if that pilot fails, then we'll stick with Empower because we're not going to go to anything that we don't pilot first. So I desperately hope that's not the situation that we're in.
Okay, thanks.
Brent?
Following off of what John was saying, looking at the time frame, is it realistic that it would even be implemented by the start of next school year?
In a word, yes. For more words, I'll turn it over to Christine.
Definitely. We've already built the system. Galen and I, and more Galen than me, we worked to build Power Teacher Pro. We met with Power School multiple times. We worked with our consultant who supported us with our transition to the Power School SIS. So the Power Teacher Pro is built and customized and set up and ready. We have our pilot teachers giving us feedback, and we would just be making any tweaks based on the pilot to be able to move forward with it next year. So it's a very realistic goal. It was actually, I was more worried about being ready with Power Teacher Pro for a Q4 pilot. That was a pretty tight timeline, but now that all the setup is done, it's just a matter of gathering feedback, making a determination, and making any tweaks we need to based on that pilot feedback to be able to implement next year if that is the direction we go.
So then importing all the grades, I'm assuming that's going to happen from Empower into Power Teacher Pro with all the different standards and competencies and all the little boxes. That can easily happen and ready to go?
We already did that for the pilot. So all of our standards are already uploaded and in. Our standards is actually it's a massive spreadsheet, but we can do a quick data export. There's about a week of reformatting that Galen did to do the import into Power Teacher Pro. We didn't do every single course. If there were teachers, so I don't think we have a third grade teacher piloting, for example. We didn't upload third grade, but we have the format and that giant spreadsheet ready. So it really is just a matter of making adjustments based on pilot feedback.
It seems a lot easier than what it took to get Empower to even work. So
yeah,
thank
we
you.
we were starting from scratch with Empower. We're really lucky actually that we had all of the standards and competencies built and developed, and we're able to easily export it out of Empower to get Empower set up. We were creating it, kind of building the plane as we were flying it. So we were developing our competencies at the same time that we were manually typing them into the system. But now that they were in Empower, this was actually a much easier process.
Great. Any parent feedback you're looking for them to look at the grades and see what they're seeing if it makes it easier than Empower, which is one of the biggest complaints?
Yeah. So we're happy to pull some parents in for that. We hadn't built that into our timeline just because we are on a very short timeline. But as we continue with it, I think there certainly could be an opportunity for some feedback. We're just a little bit concerned. We hadn't built it in because this is a Q4 pilot only, which means that the scores aren't really fully accurate. We didn't it would have been impossible to import assignment scores from Empower. So the scores in Power School currently are only Q4 scores, not scores from the beginning of the year forward. So if we fully opened that, they wouldn't really be accurate scores. So it is close to parents, but we certainly could have a small focus group that almost looks at a demo site or something like that. So, I'm happy to build that into our process.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Taylor.
Teachers still have the ability to assign grades. Having that integrated, right now teachers can have the ability to assign grades, and once this is integrated, how does that work?
Do you mean to adjust a grade based on teacher judgment and override what the grade book is calculating?
Yes.
Yes, there is that ability. In Power Teacher Pro, you can use teacher judgment and override a score either at the competency level or the course score level.
Okay, great. And do you see any issues with the current Power School and the seniors in the fall and all their transcripts going out? Will this change affect any transcript?
No, so well, if anything, it should make it easier. This fall, Galen had to export from Empower and then import into Power School. This will be a little bit easier of a process. It still has to go from the gradebook side of Power School into the historical grade portion, but it should actually be a little more seamless for transcript, for the grades to get onto the transcript.
Thank you. And thanks for the work you've done.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions for grading, let's go to the SAU 39 Anti-Discrimination Plan. Other than what Ms. Grund already mentioned with regards to the citation of the policy. Mr. Glover.
Okay. I noticed that there's a lot of words being floated around about what the levels of or the types of discrimination, and they're not consistently deployed. And there's a few instances of this. Maybe the best illustration is on the notifications page, it's page 62 in the agenda packet. Under the equal employment and prohibition against discrimination in employment, there's 2 paragraphs. On the first paragraph, it uses the word disability. Second, it uses the word physical or mental disability. So those are different. First paragraph includes the word sex. Second paragraph does not. It includes the word pregnancy. Second paragraph does not. Second paragraph includes the following, which are not in the first paragraph: familial status, genetic information, and ancestry. There are other instances in this where those terms are used, and I haven't checked them all to see where the inconsistencies lie. So I guess that's maybe a problem in having inconsistent language. And if you go all the way to the complaint form on the agenda packet, page 72, you'll see that there's even an other category, and military is included. So I think we would do ourselves a great service to have this sharpened in terms of what it's saying, and so that there's not ambiguity among and between the pages and the paragraphs.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Mr. Steele, did this originate through the policy committee, or did this originate through your office?
So Christine actually, I believe, worked on this, and Steve can chime in as well, but Christine.
Yeah, this was a pretty big undertaking, and we were probably ambitious doing this on our own. Meg, Amina, and I worked on this, and we, thought we had all our I's dotted and T's crossed. I'm happy to, this was something we brought forward to the board, which was approved. Our original draft that we brought forward was approved because it had to be approved, I believe, back in October. And we were bringing forward a revised draft based on feedback from the last meeting. I'm happy to go back. Stephanie, thank you for catching that ACA error. That was my error. But I'm happy to pass this by our legal team. We did not do that. We had taken a sample format and then customized it for our district. So we thought we had everything in good shape, but we're happy to pull this from the consent agenda and pass it by our legal team for a second check.
Thank you, Christine. Before we discuss that, Mr. Coughlin.
Yeah, so I was just, I answered by a question by looking at the policy. So the question was, are we approving this, or was it just for notification? And we're approving it. So that's good. But if we don't approve this one, the one we approved before stands. It also says ACA in it. So that's the policy till we change it. I also want to respond to John's comments, and just those first 2 paragraphs where he pointed out the differences in language between the 2 paragraphs. Those 2 paragraphs are addressing different areas. The first paragraph is about employment, and the areas that are covered are required by law, the areas where we cannot discriminate in employment. The second paragraph is about harassment and discrimination of employees, and there we have more flexibility to be more comprehensive. So some of the things that John pointed out in one paragraph or the other may be there because the law requires one and doesn't require the other, or we're being more expansive in one and there's no legal basis for the other. So that it's not just a simple question of, oh, we cut and paste the wrong words. There's more complex considerations in those differences in language.
So Christine, in terms of moving the conversation to address everyone's concerns with regards to just the updates, should we pull this tonight, have you go through and just do one final sweep, verify everything is exactly as you wish, maybe work with Steve and the rest of the policy committee and then bring that back to the board for one final approval?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. You know, I want to be able to address John's question more specifically. Sure. And I agree with Steve. I think that, but this was part of our template that we had received as a sample template. And, you know, that's something that I can't answer with 100% assurance tonight. So bringing it to our legal team might be a good next step to be able to then bring forward and answer that question and make sure everything is exactly as it should be.
Okay. Ms. Kuzma.
I think that it's better off this going to legal versus policy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. So what we'll do is we'll pull that from the consent agenda before final approval. We'll send it back. Mr. Glover.
Yeah, I have some other notes. I think the point was made, so I'm happy to discuss with you, Christine, and share with you some of the other bullet points I made. Maybe don't have to go in that now.
Yeah.
If that helps expedite the meeting. So I guess reach out to me, and I'll maybe try to type some stuff up, or we could maybe have a little working session and go over some of that.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Finally, the March facilities report. Anything for Mr. Preston? Nope. I'll just comment, Mr. President, I continue being awe at your due diligence and attention to detail and bringing that before us. It's very refreshing to actually see that the details are being taken care of. So you take care of the minor details, the big things typically take care of themselves. So thank you very, very much for doing that. Seeing nothing else, let's go ahead and entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and number 9.
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you, Ms. Kuzma. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Gronstra seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Kuzma?
Kuzma, yes.
Ms. Beam?
Beam, yes.
Mr. Conklin?
Conklin, yes.
Mr. Gronstra?
Gronstra, yes.
Mr. Coughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor?
Taylor, yes.
Mr. Torres?
Torres, yes.
Ms. Grund?
Grund, yes.
Mr. Glover?
Glover, yes.
Ms. Peters?
Peters, yes.
Ms. Lawrence?
Lawrence, yes.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Eckhoff, yes.
Ms. Hinckley? Ms. Hinckley, you're still on mute.
Sorry. Dealing with a contractor. I missed what you were asking me, Steve. Sorry.
That's okay. This is a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Oh, yes. Yes. Hinckley, yes.
Great. And O'Keefe, yes. So that's 14 in favor, unanimous. Moving on in our agenda, let's go to the superintendent's report. Any questions for the superintendent? Mr. Superintendent, would you like to make a quick presentation?
No presentation necessary, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grunt.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about it at the Sohegan meeting, about every student achieves a year of growth. And going back to one of the questions Laura actually had, it made me think about the kids who are remote all year or most of the year versus the kids that have been in person, and making and just out of, you know, even for our own information, we should be able to evaluate how effective was our remote learning, and is that the group of kids that need the extra Title I help this summer, or is it a smattering and remote had nothing to do with it? I think it would be very good for us to evaluate that.
Yeah, point taken. I agree. I think one thing we and other school districts have found is that there is a contingent of students that the remote environment works better for them, removes distractions, allows them to focus, avoids social issue, you know, whatever the reason might be. And there's others where it hasn't worked and there's no real choice for those students. So I agree with you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Mr. Glover.
On your goal update on educational leadership, it's the same one Stephanie was talking about, a different question. Come up with a plan for the summer. I know, and you talk about some Title I funding and so on, but what is the status update on the potential challenge for labor to support a summer program?
Yeah, great question. I think we're okay, John. The labor shortages that we are experiencing are with things like custodial support, food service, bus drivers for our contractors. It's folks at that end of the wage scale where finding workers is proving difficult. But for our professional staff and paraprofessional support that would be providing summer help, I'm not aware of any shortages that we're experiencing right now.
Okay.
Great. Ms. Taylor.
Adam, is May still scheduled for Teacher Appreciation Week for the first week? And how might the board participate to share our appreciation?
That's a great question. So our PTSA and our PTAs do a significant amount of work for those things. And so I would suggest connecting with them and joining alongside them. Further, as a board member, I can tell you that notes of appreciation sent to the staff. If you wanted to send me something to forward along to the faculty on behalf of you as a board member or others, that is very well appreciated. So that's another option as well.
Thank you. Ms. Grund.
Yeah, I just want to add, Adam and Laura, about that. The PTSA at Sohegan is doing something for the teachers on Wednesday, and they might be looking for a little bit of help. So if you have time, let us know.
Awesome.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor again.
Adam, I noticed you're shutting down the schools for the last 2 weeks of June. I commend you for that. I think it's well deserved. Is that partially because we've had COVID, or is this your standard protocol?
Yeah, thank you, Laura, and thank you for your support with that. We're trying to be very intentional about providing an opportunity for our entire school system to recuperate a bit after these last many months. Last summer was not an opportunity to get some of the typical summer things done that we normally do, and our administrators and staff work straight through last summer. And this school year has been a unique challenge as well. And so those 2 weeks are really the best time for this to happen, because our extended summer year programs haven't started yet. Our summer school programs, although they typically start, we can hold them off a little bit. And the hope is really that all of our administration and staff who would like to take a break will be able to, because there won't be any committee meetings. There won't be anything going on where, if you're a principal or an assistant principal, it's difficult to truly check out from school if you know that there are 100 kids in the building doing various things. So it's really just a nod. And frankly, some of you as board members made the suggestion as well that we should really try to do something intentional like this. And so this is our plan to make that happen.
Great, thank you, Mr. Steele. Well deserved, I may add. As a point of order, are you looking for specific approval of any of these comments in the memos, or just the fact that you're making the board aware of them? Is that sufficient?
Yeah, no motion necessary, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no other further questions for the superintendent, let's move on to our Director of Special Education for her Special Services Program presentation.
Oh, sorry, Stephen. Could I interrupt before we go there? There's that other memo in there. I didn't realize that was part of the superintendent's report about the update for the emergency policy on personnel protective measures. it seems a little outdated. The governor order is no longer in effect, for example. And I thought I had seen in a communication about some reduced requirements for masks during recess. So does this memo need updating to reflect the current stature and position?
It was highly accurate as of the April 1st date.
I believe so. I believe you.
Yeah, as with everything with COVID, it's a moving target. But yeah, the emergency policy that this references requires me to update you on a regular basis. So happy to do that by the next update. But I can just tell you things have changed, and we've made those changes public since the April 1st date when I wrote this.
Yes, I figured it, just for the record.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Ms. Beauchamp, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I am going to attempt to share my screen with you all. And once I do, I won't be able to see very many of you. So if you would, Mr. O'Keefe, if there's a question along the way, if you could let me know, that would be great.
If it's okay with you, let's do the presentation first and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, that works.
Great.
So a number of months ago now, Superintendent Steele asked me to put together for the boards just sort of a presentation, a brief presentation to update you with regard to where we are in special program development. It's been probably about 5 years now that I've been working pretty aggressively to develop some special programs within our public school system. I've addressed the boards separately, I think, at various points in time along this path, but it seemed like a good idea to do an update. So that's what this presentation is about tonight. And when I was thinking, whoops, this isn't moving. It's not moving. Sorry, Adam, my thing's stuck.
No worries. If you want, I can try. There you go.
I got it. So when I was thinking about putting this together, I thought that I really needed to start sort of with the why. And my why in the decision-making process that I go through with just about everything is grounded or connected somehow back to the law. And the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Education Act or IDEA as others refer to it, really dictates how we define programs, placements, and educational opportunities that we provide to students who are identified with various types of educational disabilities. And IDEA really requires public school districts to offer all of its identified students a continuum of supports and services within the public school system, from the most restrictive from the least restrictive alternative to the most restrictive. And there are a variety of different options that we can make available to kids with that in mind. So currently in our public school systems, in just about every building, probably with the exception of Mount Vernon, we have obviously the least restrictive environment where we work with children is in the regular ed classroom. Students who have identified disabilities can participate fully with their peers, and we can provide supports and services in a push-in model or by some modified curriculum or accommodations. And that's the least restrictive environment in our schools. From there, we go to a little bit more of a restrictive setting, which is our learning center programs. Those also need program approval from the Department of Education. Those are learning centers are where we pull students perhaps for small interventions in a smaller group setting. Sometimes they utilize different curriculum than what's being utilized in the regular ed classroom. And then we have a self-contained model, self-contained programs. And when I arrived in SAU 39, we didn't have any. We didn't have any capacity in any of our districts anywhere to provide programs and opportunities for children who required substantially separate or different curriculum for 60% or more of their day due to the nature and severity of their disability. But yet it's a requirement under IDEA. So after a year and a half or so under my belt, I honed in on that and really started working hard with the building level administration and the Department of Ed and the staff to sort of remedy that problem. And then, as everybody knows, the most restrictive thing that we do in terms of placement for children is out of district. Certainly not our preferred thing to do. We only do it if we absolutely have to and we can't meet the needs of children in district. Once that happens, we sort of lose our quality control. Maybe that's not the appropriate term, but I pride myself, and I know the rest of the administration does as well, in selecting and hiring the absolute best people and the best staff to work with our children, from paraprofessionals to professional teaching staff, BCBAs. And once students go out of district, I lose the oversight with regard to that. And so do the building level administrators. We no longer have any say or responsibility in that. There's, of course, the expensive transportation costs and the tuition expenses. The tuition can increase between 2 and 5% annually, and it typically does. But probably more importantly is once this happens, there really is no opportunity for children to be participating or educated or involved with their peers in their neighborhood school. And there is very limited access or a limited opportunity for them to even participate in extracurricular activities or sports, things like that. So this is certainly not something that we would prefer to do. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight, even though it's, like I just mentioned, not the most important factor, I get this question typically every budget season. I've gone through an exercise like this more than once, but at the time that I put this presentation together, what I did was I tried to take a snapshot, a day in the life of one of our special programs. I won't tell you which one. And I said, okay, today in this program, how many children are there? Who are the staff? And so these are actual costs based on that day that I chose, probably back in October, I think, when I started working on this. And so as you can see, the program that I chose had at that point in time an enrollment of 11 students. The actual cost for the full-time special education teacher in the program plus benefits, you can see there's $88,000 and change. The program has a full-time board certified behavior analyst, or BCBA, attached to it. And so the cost for that staff and benefits is listed here. And there were, at that point in time, 10 one-to-one paraprofessionals associated with the program and 1 full-time nursing assistant, and the costs associated with that. I did have to do an estimate with regard to the cost of the paras, because those costs fluctuate depending upon how many years of experience they have, whether they take benefits. But I worked with the business office, and I did sort of a lowball estimate. Some are higher, some are lower. And then for the out-of-district costs, I tried to be very generous with that. So I picked an out-of-district tuition that was on the lower end, and you can see it's $92,000 per year per child for this particular out-of-district placement that I chose. I can tell you that many are much higher. I can also tell you that not many are much lower. So that's the number that I went with. If those students go out of district, they still need one-to-one paraprofessionals. So those costs stay. If a particular student went out of district, that student would still need a full-time nursing assistant. So those costs stay. And then I really lowballed the bus runs because for 11 students to be able to only access 3 to 4 different programs would be laughable, but I did it anyway. And so I did the math on an estimated 3 to 4 bus runs. And you can see that those are at an average cost of right now, $230 a day. So all said and done, the totals, when you look at the in-district costs versus out-of-district costs, when we are running a in-district program, the cost savings per year is over $1 million. So that's one day in the life of one of our programs. Certainly when we add students to a program, the in-district costs go down. The out-of-district costs don't ever seem to go down. So when I was looking at what we could potentially do in the current status of our program development, there are really only 2 types of programs that require out-of-district placement for kids. The first type would be a program that's designed to meet the needs of kids who have very significant cognitive impairments, medical needs, autism, things of that nature. Sometimes kids have multiple disabilities, many things going on at the same time. And then the second need is for students with social, emotional, and behavioral deficits or issues. So those are the focus of the in-district programs that we've developed. Currently, at the Clark Wilkins Elementary School, we have the students under the age of 6 years old, which is pre-K. So we have just received preliminary approval, not just, late last spring, we received preliminary program approval for that SONS program for pre-K children. We also have a Little Stars program for children who are in kindergarten that we also have preliminary DOE approval for. The reason why those 2 programs are broken apart is because the Department of Ed will not allow us to use a pre-K program for a placement for any child who is 6 years old. So we had to break it apart, but I don't want to mislead you in terms of thinking that we have 2 completely separate programs just at Clark School. We don't, but we have to break it apart in name for placement purposes for the DOE. And then we have the STARS program at Wilkins, which is for grades 1 through 4. Obviously, students with significant needs. We have full Department of Ed approval for that program. And we have the My Time program for grades 1 through 4, also at Wilkins. And we have preliminary DOE approval for that program. That serves students who have the social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Similarly, at Amherst Middle School, we have our life skills program. We have DOE approval for that. And we have also a My Time program at the middle school. And then at Sohegan High School, last week, hot off the press, I just got preliminary program approval for the transitions program that serves the needs of kids in grades 9 through 12, but that we typically keep, I will tell you, until the age of 21. And the alternative support program that will work with students who have social emotional needs is sitting in preliminary approval status right now with the DOE. So that being said, where are we going? My vision for the future is that we will, all of those programs that I just spoke about will have full Department of Education approval. Always we're looking to engage in ongoing systemic and sustainable staff development for the staff that works in the programs, and also something that has come up more frequently, and especially this year, some professional development to help the regular education staff have a better understanding of what it is that we're doing and why, and to try and engage them and have a better connection between the programs and the regular ed staff. We want everybody on the same page, understanding what it is that we're trying to do. The children are first part of the Amherst Middle School or Clark Wilkins Elementary, and secondarily part of a specialized program. It would be great if we could have some facilities that would comfortably house everybody, but at the rate at which we're growing, the school populations in general in Amherst are growing, and the facilities are not growing. That has become a bit of a hindrance in terms of our capacity to maintain some kids in district. But then lastly, it's my hope to have some really solid established partnerships with community agencies, big brothers, big sisters, vocational opportunities for kids, to allow our students to participate more meaningfully and connect more meaningfully with their communities. So as I mentioned, the current major barriers to my brilliant future vision is adequate space, and the increase in significant health, mental health and behavioral issues that we're seeing at a startling rate and at quite a young age. This slide is concerning. So if you look at this, it's startling to me to understand that in 1 in 6 children ages 2 to 8 years old, there's a diagnosable mental health, emotional, or behavioral disorder. And the statistic that 1 in 5 children aged 3 to 17 might have the same type of diagnosed disorder. We are seeing it though in our public schools. And by far the most difficult disability to be able to address falls into the category of disruptive behavior disorders, which is a diagnosed mental health disorder. I don't need to read this all to you. I know that this slide was in the packet, but the reason that these children are so difficult to work with is because of some of the characteristics that go along with this. The aggressive behaviors, the acting out behaviors, the disruptive behaviors. We don't have the space necessarily to be able to address this in a safe way. And I would argue that most public schools maybe don't. We try, and currently what we have in place, we have our school social workers who are great and can work with many kids. We have qualified special education staff that are designated to work with high-risk students. We have social emotional curriculums in place. We have BCBAs in almost every building throughout the SAU. And we do have some alternative learning spaces for students who need that. And we also have the program approval so that if students need that for an extended period of time or 60% or more of their school day, they can access it. But that means that we are oftentimes charged with trying to figure out how do we work with these children who are struggling so significantly in a public school setting, in a safe space, without disrupting the regular education programs that are going on. And that's where we really sort of hit a roadblock. We need children to be able to have opportunities to access the services that they need, but we also need to protect the rights of the other children who are at school to be educated as well. So Adam asked me to get my crystal ball out and kind of look at a timeline in terms of where I think we might be going. And the first few years were easy. I know exactly where we're going. FY 21-22, we've done all of these different things that are on the list. I'm currently working, Roger and the administration and the middle school and the elementary schools. We've all met, we've designated spaces, we've redesigned spaces. Roger has been great to work with, as you all probably are well aware, and he's helped me troubleshoot some issues with our existing space, but we're continuing to work on that. And then in FY 22-23, we'll have our final program approvals for everything. But I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't start to try to think outside the box. Now that I know that our space needs are going to stay a significant need for the foreseeable future. And so I've started reaching out and having conversations with neighborhood districts to find out where they are in terms of, because this is not a problem isolated to New Hampshire. Public school districts all over the country are dealing with young children with disruptive behaviors. And so I've reached out and started to have conversations with folks about, you know, is there a possibility to connect and work collaboratively together? Next year, I hope to focus a little bit more on that and do some site visits to even some out of district placement options that might run really good programs for kids who have significant mental health needs. I'd like to take some of the staff and go do some visits. I'd like to do some research. We have RSEC that we work with right now, which is a out of district placement, but we're part of a collaborative. I'm looking at collaborative models in other states right now that have pulled surrounding districts and have pooled their resources and created sort of an off-site but local alternative option for kids. So I started to do some research around that, and then that I think needs to continue in FY 23-24 with research of best practice, effective curriculum alternatives. Would it even be a lucrative model? Could we do it? Could we find an off-site place or a satellite location that other districts would buy into? And could we pool our resources? Would it be advantageous for us to do that so that we could have sort of an out of district, in district option for kids who can't stay within our public school four walls, brick and mortar walls, if you will, because of disruptive behaviors? Is there another opportunity or option out there that I haven't found yet? So I anticipate doing a lot of work on this. And if it is an option, I would put together some type of a proposal for the board that would outline exactly what it would look like, what the costs associated with that would be. And we would go from there. But those are far reaching and a lot of what ifs. I recognize that. But again, I just don't see a different way around the space crunch that we're in. And it's my job to try to make fiscally responsible decisions for the districts that I work in. And maybe it won't work, but that's sort of where I'm at. So I'm ready for any questions that you might have. That was kind of long-winded and I'm not used to talking that much. Well, that's not true, but.
Nice presentation, thank you. Mr. Eckhoff is first. Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, Stephen. And Meg, thanks so much for that presentation. So insightful and well-crafted, and you can feel your passion and what you do for the district and what you present, not just tonight, but every time you speak, it's commendable. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions and comments, and I'll do them all and then you can respond. But my question is the cost support from the state and the federal in terms of, well, I just use transportation as my first example. So if our transportation costs are going up 2% every year, is our state and federal support increasing by 2%, or is it lagging behind so that we're keeping pace with what our costs are? So if our costs are going up 2% and we're only getting 1% increase from the state and federal, then all the districts are falling behind. So that's my first question. My second question is, what is our ability? Hey, I'm sorry for that, everybody. What's our ability to acquire the talent? Because I think the road you're going down as far as in-house programming is better. But my question is, how do we acquire that talent? And is it out there? And is it the talent pool large enough for us to acquire that? And then my third comment would be, is there some, to your space concerns at the end, is there some commercial building space available? Because I know that, you know, due to COVID, everybody has contracted how much office space, how much production space, whatever it may be, can we somehow throw out a fishnet to say to the commercial community and say, look, we need a space, we need X amount of square feet, and this is why we need it. And can you help us out? We're willing to pay, but you could also be willing to donate the space as a tax benefit. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. And again, I want to follow up and just say, great presentation. What you do is incredible. There's a lot of wins here, but there's a lot of challenges here. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I don't do it alone. I work with great people. But with regard to your first question and cost support, we get some federal money through our IDEA grant. It certainly doesn't cover the costs that we incur. And then we get what's called special education aid. It used to be called catastrophic aid. So what has to happen in order for us to get that aid back is we first have to expend the money. And then we keep track of all of the money that we spend on, we have a targeted population of students. And once we hit 3.5 times the state average cost for educating a child, we're supposed to get a percentage of that money back. It comes back a year after we've spent it in the form of revenue. So it comes back as revenue and it offsets your taxes. But to answer your question, do they keep up with the increasing costs and with what we spend? Absolutely not. And I can tell you that our federal monies have never fully funded the cost of special education students the way it should have. It just has never happened. And each year, I'm not quite sure how much money we'll get back in special education aid. It can range from, 75% of what we spent, 60% of what we spent. You're never quite sure what you're going to get. And they set that special education aid rate in the spring. So I should be getting those. And I think I already got those numbers. So that's that question. The ability to acquire talent question. I am lucky because I work for SAU 39, and for whatever reason, everybody wants to come and work in SAU 39. It is a great place to work. We have incredibly talented people here. I have nothing but great things to say in terms of being an employee of SAU 39. It's a very, very well-respected school district across the entire state. I've oftentimes said that people don't move to a town for a great special education program. They move to a town for a great educational program. Special education is secondary to that. So we have not, as of yet, had trouble attracting talent. And I don't foresee that we will. And then last, I love your idea about looking for commercial space. That has been something in the back of my mind. First, I want to see if I can pull people in with me to see, is this something that we can do? Is this something that we can build in sort of a collaborative model? If not, my backup plan is, what would it cost for us to go it alone? And then what would we charge everybody for tuition if they wanted to send their students there and they weren't part of our district? So I have both of those thoughts sort of rattling around in my mind, and I think about that a lot. So that's a great idea.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. Stephanie.
So Meg, thanks for the presentation. Special ed's near and dear to my heart. Always will be. We do have some fantastic people that work in our district. So if you have not had a chance to meet some of our paras, the case managers, the special ed teachers, the BCBAs, seriously first rate. So thank you for all that. So my question, the point I wanted to make was, so Hegan 2.0, I am working with Mike about the science labs coming up. And I'm just wondering if we should also talk to see if it's something that with Sohegan, we should, what, depending what your needs are there, we should wrap that into the discussion as well. If it's a serious need coming up with the program, I think it's worth a discussion. So I'll reach out to you and wrap you into that discussion with Mike.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, just a little thought of next year is going to be unique with a lot of kids who are coming back into the district who not necessarily qualify, and with 504s, IEPs may not have the programs, but we know there's going to be some social emotional needs there. Any thoughts on how we're going to address that?
Well,
one support.
Yeah, it weighs heavy on our minds. We already know of some kids who are really struggling. I will say that at the building level, the faculty, the staff, they have their finger on the pulse of who's out there and who's struggling remarkably well. That being said, one of the intents that I had when I set up programs like the My Time programs was I wanted there to be some flexibility there. So if I didn't want a child to have to be an identified child with a disability on an IEP to be able to access supports and services, right? When I first came, that is the way it was. And I thought, well, if we're always being reactive and we're identifying the kid and then giving them the supports and services that they need instead of giving them the supports and services that they need so that maybe we don't have to identify them, that might be a better way to go. So we do have a sort of a tiered approach, and students who are struggling, during a period of their lives who need support, get the support, whether they're on an IEP or a 504 plan or not. And I don't anticipate that that's ever going to change. That's the best way, to meet the needs of all of the children. So we've tried to be really flexible in that regard. But you know what? You're right. Next year is a big question mark, I think, for a lot of us. But we will rally and we'll support the kids who need it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steph. Sarah.
Thank you. Meg, I'm just going to echo what everybody else said. Thanks so much for the hard work that you do and for the presentation. It's always good to see what's going on and how your thought process works and how the process works. You've been a great partner with the Mount Vernon School and Mount Vernon School Board and trying to come up with creative solutions for special education in our district as well. And I know that there are some particular challenges because we're a smaller district, and it wasn't really brought up in your presentation. So I wonder, do you have something quick that you can just address as to how Mount Vernon as a district would benefit from the plan, and what our taxpayers might be able to anticipate, simply because we're so much smaller and the impact is really a huge one for us. So can you just give people a sense of what that looks like in Mount Vernon and how this plan would benefit the Mount Vernon students as well?
Absolutely. So there's one benefit. Let me talk about first kids who go from Mount Vernon Village School into the middle school. So children like that have a specialized need for a specialized program, who transition up to the Amherst Middle School, are able to have their needs met still within our public school district in the school that they would attend ordinarily as Mount Vernon Village School children. In addition to that, we have been able to move some Mount Vernon children up a little bit early, so that they could access specialized programs at a much reduced cost to the Mount Vernon taxpayers, probably not even half the cost of what it would be to send the Mount Vernon Village School child out of district. So anytime I have a preschooler in Mount Vernon, for example, who needs a specialized program, the first thing I do is reach out to my Amherst preschool program and say, do we have space for this child from Mount Vernon? Again, at a much reduced cost. We give you only the actual cost that it would be to educate the child. So if it's a paraprofessional cost, Mount Vernon pays for the paraprofessional. And then we divide up the rest. If there's 11 children in the program, then Mount Vernon pays 1/11 of the cost of the teacher. In that way, it's certainly not the exorbitant cost of an out-of-district placement. And that is the same across the board. And then, of course, Mount Vernon is already rolled into Sauhegan High School. So Mount Vernon children always get priority to be able to access the Amherst programs if there's space.
Great, thank you. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that we always appreciate your out-of-the-box thinking, and in Mount Vernon, we really value the special ed programs that are available already, and certainly we're always looking for creative solutions. So anything that you could do to put your thinking cap on and see if there's a way that we could always do better, we're open to that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad to hear it. Not everybody always appreciates my out-of-the-box thinking.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Laura.
Meg, I have a couple of questions about your, I thank you as well. Thank you for all the work you do. I have a couple of questions about the cost comparison analysis you have. The transportation costs for out of district are like 80% of our total transportation costs for Sauhegan. For 11 students as opposed to 700. Is there any savings? Is there no competition in that market, or that just seems very, very large? And you have no transportation cost in the in-district cost, but those students, a lot of them take special transportation to school.
A few of them do. So an out-of-district run is much more expensive than an in-district run, even if it's a specialized run. So there's that piece. The other thing that you mentioned is the competition. You're absolutely right. There is zero competition. I think we found that even with the regular ed transportation, when they sent that out for a bid, I don't know, did you have any bidders? I don't know. I think very, very few, if anybody, bid. And it's the same way with specialized transportation. There are just not very many players in the game there. So we are held a little bit hostage to those costs.
Okay, and in your mock-up for the out-of-district cost, are you sending paraprofessionals with the students all day?
We don't send our own paraprofessionals, but the students who would be in and out of district placement would require a one-to-one paraprofessional. So we have to pay the costs of those paraprofessionals wherever the child is.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you again, Meg, for your time and your effort in delivering this very important presentation to all of us tonight. So thank you for doing that. Seeing nothing else, let's move on to our discussion with regards to board policy BEDG. So this was a specific request from a community member for us to have a quick dialogue with regards to our current approach, how we execute on that policy each year, and how our policy committee is going to be reevaluating its verbiage and process. So Mr. Steele, if it's good with you, let's start off with you just to articulate what the policy does and specifically to the non-public minutes piece, and then we'll turn it over to Ms. Kuzma.
Very good. So as the board is clearly aware, there are non-public sessions that the board entertains under RSA 91A. After the board goes into non-public, minutes are still kept of what is the general topic of issues discussed in a non-public session. And so it seems ironic that a non-public session that there are recorded minutes that say what was talked about. But that is something required by RSA 91A. And those non-public minutes become available, and even in draft form, they have to be published within 3 days after the meeting for the public to know what was discussed in non-public. The exception to that are non-public minutes that are subsequently sealed by the board. Non-public minutes can be sealed with a motion immediately following the non-public session, where the reason for why those minutes are sealed is identified. In the statutory language, identifies a few very specific and narrow instances where minutes can be sealed. examples of which include if a board was looking to purchase real estate from another entity, and the board discussed their highest price they'd be willing to pay for that real estate in the non-public session. That's something that certainly shouldn't be disclosed to the public, because that would give away the board's leverage in the negotiation for the real estate. Another example would be if the reputation of someone not on the board was discussed in that non-public session, and disclosure of that conversation publicly could harm that person's reputation, then those minutes are sealed. And then once minutes are sealed, any minutes that are temporarily sealed, meaning the board takes a motion to seal them for a week, a month, a year, or to a specific date, those become unsealed when that date comes. And so the board, under this policy, has a requirement to make sure that those minutes are periodically reviewed and unsealed if necessary, if the reason why those minutes were sealed is removed. So anytime someone's reputation is discussed, those minutes will never become unsealed, because whatever was discussed and included in those minutes will harm someone's reputation indefinitely into the future. The very narrow instance where typically board minutes are unsealed is for things like a real estate transaction, that in the future, after a real estate transaction closes, it doesn't make any difference what the board discussed about that real estate transaction. So that's one example like that. So the policy BEDG outlines exactly how that process is followed and what that looks like. And I have a responsibility to identify for you if there are any sealed minutes that could become unsealed or should become unsealed, again, which is a very rare circumstance.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Kuzma, can you speak briefly to what the policy committee is going to be doing specifically to further define a couple of terms that are identified in policy BEDG?
Yeah, so during the policy season over the summer, we'll have the opportunity to review this policy in its entirety, not just specifically about this, the non-public and sealed minutes. The entire policy will be reviewed and edited if needed. But around periodically, as a committee, we will work to try to identify what periodically means, whether it's a specific time limit, or we'll work as a committee to figure that out, as well as with Adam. We don't want to necessarily say periodically is every week, so we'll work to figure out what a logical time frame might possibly be in that situation, and ways to make sure that it happens.
Great, thank you. And if a member of the public wanted to attend a policy committee meeting, where can they find a list of meetings and Zoom information or dialogue for them to attend? We're still working on getting all of the meetings set up, because it's April. Their first organizational meeting is not until June, but all the meeting invites are working on getting set up. On the SAU website, there is a policy section specifically under SAU committees that will have the list of meeting dates, times, and information, with a public Zoom link, because we'll be meeting through Zoom. I'm assuming we'll still be meeting through Zoom over the summer. Great, thank you. And when we take a look at the policy committee, I'm sure we're going to be getting an update at our May meeting, discussing what the outline for those potential meetings would be, correct?
You mean like the days?
Yeah, so an idea of the organizational meeting, and then from there, the policy committee will determine how often and frequent and when they'll meet, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's, I'm assuming we're going to follow the same schedule we did last time. Once we have the organizational meeting, it'll be about every other week for many, many hours each time.
Hard work.
Yeah. And, we'll have an end date. We're not sure when that is yet, but we'll have an end date. At some point during that, we might have to throw in extra meetings if we have too much to get done. But we'll have at least a rough concept.
Great. Any questions from board members with regards to Mr. Steele and Ms. Kuzma's presentation? Seeing none. Before we go to non-public, I had a request to have a quick presentation from JFAC. So Ms. Facey, as a part of our public comment period, we'll have JFAC actually make a quick presentation, and we'll waive the 3-minute speaking time.
Oh, I don't want to take the public time. I feel bad about that.
No. The public's still going to have their ample opportunity, but go ahead.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'll be brief. You'll remember that I was previously the chair of JFAC. We now have a new chair, Shannon Gascoigne, and a new vice chair, Victoria Parisi. So they're not at that meeting, this meeting, but I'll just give you a quick update on what we have been up to. So in terms of finance, we are still in the process of looking at financing options with both the USDA Rural Development and New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. Michelle successfully submitted a skeletal application to USDA to meet their submission requirements. And we have the possible opportunity to lock in favorable rates prior to the approval of the warrant next year. I also have set up a meeting with New Hampshire DOE to explore the possibility of applying for state building aid. Following an RFQ process that was led by Roger, a subcommittee of JFAC interviewed 2 architectural firms just prior to this meeting, actually. The full JFAC will be reviewing this subcommittee's recommendation, and then it will go to the Amherst board for approval. The construction cost subcommittee, SAU, and building administrators and the full JFAC are looking forward to working with the selected architect to continue to focus on the design and especially the cost of the projects. We have site and civil engineering work underway to map out the wetlands, complete test pit and borings in order to provide us with any red flags and information we should know pre-bond. The PR subcommittee has been very busy and have completed an awesome coming soon type postcard for residents and providing links on where folks can find additional information. The Clark School Subcommittee has gotten up to speed very quickly and has begun to actively engage the community, seeking out input through a survey. And I understand there are over 125 responses so far. And finally, Roger, Shannon, and Victoria attended a recent Board of Selectmen meeting to actively bring them into the conversation, providing them with an update on our work to date. They were very receptive and welcoming. One item in particular that they discussed and that deserves attention by JFAC is to includes the need to refine the message around the Clark School and its suitability as a school building and a building that allows the district to reach class size goals. So those are the highlights of our committee work. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Amy for JFAC? Awesome. I do actually have one quick question with regards to the project. We still moving or planning to move forward with one unified bundled project, or have there been any decisions about breaking them up?
Yeah, we are discussing the possibility of having one bond for the majority of the work and then a second bond for potential mostly energy efficiency, sustainability upgrades as a way to give the voters a choice in whether they want to move forward with that type of work or not.
Great. I would just ask that we continue to engage the Mount Vernon board when it comes to the middle school. That would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions for JFAC? Seeing none, let's open up the floor to our second public comment for the evening. So members of the public, I invite you to use the raise your hand feature, and then you'll have the floor to address the board. I ask that you just state your name, your address, and the town in which you reside, and you'll have the floor for 3 minutes. Great. First is Miss Gibson. Miss Gibson, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. O'Keefe. I would like to be more specific in the request for more transparency as to the equity project that I have been made aware of at the Sauhegan High School. I understand that I have not been able to receive any answers as project's goal is for teachers and what effects will it put upon the students. I believe that the transparency is needed to show respect to our town residents for supporting our educational system in our district. And I think it would allow for some public input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Next, we'll move to Kelly Schmidt. Ms. Schmidt, you have the floor. Please state your name, address, and the town in which you reside.
My name is Kelly Schmidt. I live at 11 Patricia Lane in Amherst. And I know I put my question into the Q&A section, so I just wanted to kind of repeat it. And I know this, I probably won't get an answer here, so I might email about it. I'm kind of curious more from I'm also a Ways and Means Committee member, so I'm kind of curious from that standpoint as well. Regarding some of the projections that Meg made and the financial differences between in district and out of district placement. She did a fantastic job explaining the whole thing, but I was kind of curious in terms of how we choose to budget some of those things as line items. Does it show up for us separately that the out-of-district paraprofessional that we're paying for is truly an out-of-district staff position that we're paying for? And do we have any accountability of that person to the district that, you know, if we're paying for them, what accountability do they personally have as an employee back to this district, or is that just a straight out-of-pocket cost in regards to the, you know, the paraprofessional and maybe the nurse assistant, whatever the dynamic is that would be needed, and just sort of curious, I guess, more details than she gave on some of that. But
Great.
That's it, and thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm sure that we can capture your question in writing there and someone can get back to you. If you're on Ways and Means, I'm assuming you still have an SAU email address, and we can forward that response off to you right away. Any other members of the public that wish to engage with your school board? Great, seeing none. What we'll do now is we will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have no non-public, so I believe we are good to go. Great. I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor, raise your hands. It's unanimous. Danae, thank you very much for your time. Everyone have a great week next week.